Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into some really powerful sources on African literature.
Yes, focusing quite a bit on Ngũgĩ waThiong'o, a major figure, and we've also got insights from Chinua Achebe too.
Right, and our goal is to really unpack what these sources tell us. Things like, why it matters who tells the story, especially Africa's story.
And how colonialism really impacted things like identity, language, deep stuff. Plus, we'll dig into Ngũgĩ's novel, The River Between, and see how it explores conflict.
Both conflict within the community and within individuals.
Exactly. It's kind of like moving past a simpler picture to grasp a more complex reality, the reality of these African experiences and the literary pushback.
Okay, so let's dive in. That message from Chinua Achebe you mentioned, it feels like a great starting point.
It really does. He makes this fundamental point.
Mm-hmm.
Africa isn't just one thing. It's huge, diverse, complex.
And he pointed out how, for so long, the stories about Africa often came from outsiders, right? And weren't always positive or complete.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Often quite negative, actually. So he stressed how vital it is for Africans to, take control of that narrative, tell their own stories.
Define themselves, write themselves into the picture.
Yeah. And that's exactly what Ngũgĩ waThiong'o has been doing. Born in Kenya, 1938, so his life is just woven into that colonial history and the fight for independence.
And the sources highlight his analysis of how imperialism worked, not just militarily.
Right. He talks about its most sort of insidious weapon. He calls it the cultural bomb.
The cultural bomb. Tell us more about that. What did he mean?
He saw it as this deliberate strategy to basically destroy a people's belief in themselves, attacking their names, their language, their heritage.
Wow. Like attacking the core of their identity.
Exactly. The soul of the community.
So thinking about that, his famous decision later on to stop writing novels in English and switch to Gikuyu, that was a direct response then.
Absolutely. A direct counteraction. What he outlines in Decolonize the Mind. It was about reclaiming language, affirming its value, connecting with people beyond the Western educated elite in Kenya.
And these themes, identity, language, resistance, they show up powerfully in his early work too, like The River Between. The sources spend some time on this one.
Yes, published in 1965. It's set in colonial Kenya, focusing on this major friction point. British missionary influence versus the Gikuyu practice of female circumcision.
And what's really interesting from the sources is how the novel presents this conflict. It's not just the white man arrived, now there's trouble.
No, not at all. It suggests tension was kind of already there, in the landscape even.
Yeah.
Symbolized by those two ridges, Kameno and Makuyu, with the valley between them.
Like the potential for division existed before colonialism really hit hard.
That seems to be Ngũgĩ's point. Colonialism didn't invent division. It exploited existing fault lines, made them worse, drew new, harsher lines. The book opens by emphasizing this landscape, this inherent separation.
That complicates the narrative quite a bit. Conflict isn't just imposed from outside.
And Ngũgĩ seems to ask you to grapple with that tension, understand its roots, maybe even respect its complexity, rather than just wanting it toadied up.
And we see this through characters like Waiyaki. He's trying to bridge the gap, isn't he?
Yes, he gets Western education, hoping it's the key to uniting everyone, finding salvation for the community. But his father warned him about the vices.
Which leads to that central, difficult question Ngũgĩ raises. Can you use the colonizers' tools, their disease, to cure the disease of colonialism itself?
It's a huge dilemma.
Yeah.
And the community questions Waiyaki directly on this, like, okay, education is great, but will it get our land back? A very practical, urgent question.
And then there's the intense religious side, the mission schools banning anyone who goes through the traditional initiation.
Because they saw it, particularly the circumcision part, as heathen. But the sources, referencing people like Kenyatta, explain this wasn't just, a procedure for the Gikuyu.
It was fundamental.
Absolutely central, tied into education, social structure, morality, religion. Banning it felt like an attack on their entire identity as a people.
Which makes the story of Muthoni so heartbreaking. She tries to be both Christian and initiated.
Yeah, she literally tries to embody that bridge. But her tragedy, as the sources point out, shows how trying to force reconciliation between such deep opposing forces, it can be devastating.
Like Waiyaki with education. She tries a single solution for an incredibly complex problem.
Without fully grasping the weight, the history, the sheer opposition involved.
So let's try and wrap this up. What's the big takeaway from this deep dive for you?
I think it really hammers home how crucial it is for African writers to define their own realities, to tell these complex, multi-layered stories about who they are, their history, the conflicts.
Yeah, and Gumuji's ideas, the cultural bomb, the way he depicts tension in the river between, it really pushes back against simple good versus evil narratives of colonialism.
Definitely. And it makes you ask those hard questions about the methods of liberation. Can the master's tools dismantle the master's house, so to speak?
And maybe the final thought, the one Guji leaves us with, is that tension, conflict. Maybe it isn't just something to be solved.
Perhaps. Perhaps it's an inherent part of the social fabric, something that needs deep understanding, maybe even a kind of respect for its complexity, more than just a quick fix.
So for you listening, maybe the challenge is to look past those easy answers when thinking about history and culture and embrace the difficult, unresolved complexities that writers like Ngugi bring to light so powerfully.